Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed those little snippets of our weekend, aside from Eden's shameless butt sniffing. Those were some clips from our visit to my parents' farm, and we got to enjoy a cool, beautiful day out there with pizza, doggos, and some pretty flowers. Anywho, as promised, I have something spooky for you all today. We're going to be using mixed media to tackle the first prompt of this year's DRAWTOBER challenge, which I will have linked down below if you'd like to participate. The first prompt is carving, and I struggled coming up with something for this one because I prefer drawing animals and creatures, and I could not quite figure out how to incorporate that into the theme. Although this could be any type of carving, pumpkin carving is usually what's associated with this word at this time of year. So I felt like just drawing a critter standing or sitting in the vicinity of a carved pumpkin would be kind of a cop-out for me, and I wanted to make something interesting while at the same time using one of my own characters. Since I don't actually have that many characters that fit a Halloween theme, I was really stumped as to what to do. Then I remembered, I do have a character who is both creepy and an animal, and here we have Hecate, or Kate as she's nicknamed, who is a character from a novel I've been working on over the past couple of years. Kate is a familiar who normally appears as a regular black domestic cat, but can turn into the scary-looking Black Panther critter whenever her owner is in danger. Since the only business Kate would have with a pumpkin would be to crush it, that's what I went with. I figured maybe someone threw it at her while trying to escape and she managed to catch it before it could hit her. It made for a cool pose anyways. So up on the screen now, you should be seeing the initial thumbnail of this piece. I've been enjoying drawing floating or jumping poses lately, so I went with that for this as well. And next you can see the rough sketch and the refined sketch. When the sketch was done, I scanned this into Photoshop so that I could easily transfer it over to watercolor paper. I didn't do any digital editing to the sketch other than flipping it. I always forget to try and draw things facing right, and I'm trying to get some variety in my gallery, so I cheated a little bit here. Don't judge me. Unlike the last sketch I printed out onto watercolor paper, I felt like this one got noticeably hazy once I started applying the water. Not too much of a big deal, but I'm not sure what exactly caused it. It might come down to me using my fancy printer to print this, and the brand of ink not liking the water too much, but I can't say for sure. All that really matters in the end is that it didn't ruin this piece, so good deal as far as I'm concerned. So just like the last piece, I decided to use watercolor as more of a base for this one. Since Kate doesn't have much of a pattern going on and her color scheme is minimalistic, I wanted to take this opportunity to focus more on capturing the shapes on her anatomy via shading. I cut out the footage, but I did use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process between layers. This is the first time I've used this technique, and aside from almost blowing my supplies off the desk a couple of times, it worked really well. Usually I'm too impatient to wait for layers to dry completely before I add more color, and with this technique I was actually able to see the difference in how the watercolor lays down on the paper when the layer beneath it is dry. I definitely think this is something I'll keep doing in the future. I wanted to mention that I almost forgot is that after the tragedy at the end of our last video, I did test this paper with other washi tape and found out that it does not agree with any tape. Literally everything tears it up, so that's a bit disappointing. Since this comes on a watercolor block, I'm guessing you're supposed to keep it on there to keep it from buckling and just remove it after it's dry. But since I've been printing my lines lately, that's just not an option for me. Maybe I'll stop being lazy and actually sketch on the watercolor paper one day, but please don't hold your breath, guys. That aside, I still really love this paper and it doesn't buckle enough to make me find this a huge issue, so I'll be continuing to use it even if I can't tape it down. Also, the watercolors I used for this piece were a mix of my Winsor & Newton Cotman set and my mystery watercolors that I forgot the name of, but will have linked down below. This kind of made me wish I had some higher quality watercolors in dark shades. I love using the Primo watercolors, and I was kind of sad I didn't get to use them in this piece since they didn't really fit the color scheme I was going for, but I was absolutely missing the saturation, the Primo watercolors pack while I was working on this, and I knew as soon as I saw how light the colors were going down that I was going to have to do a lot of work with other media to bring in some contrast. Is this just an excuse to buy more watercolor palettes? Perhaps, but hey, that just means I'll have even more stuff to demo for you guys. Everybody wins except for my wallet. After laying down the watercolor, my next step was to pull out my gouache to work on the lovely Michaels-inspired floral arrangement in the background. I also used the gouache to lay down the base for Kate's flaming green eyeballs. I figured it'd be better to use the gouache for that rather than the watercolor since gouache is a good deal more opaque. With that same shade of green, I added a very light wash to some areas of her skull where the light from her eyes would hit. After that, I heavily watered down some blue gouache to begin adding some more depth to Kate's body. I think trying to accentuate Kate's muscles was probably my favorite part of working on this piece. I just kept adding more and more layers of shading to bring more depth in and also to get more true to her color. While she's just a regular black cat in her small kitty form, her monster form has more of a blue-green hue to it that I wanted to make sure I captured in this piece. I think it ended up leaning more toward blue than green in the end, but for my first attempt trying to nail her down in traditional media, I'm pretty happy with it. I think she turned out pretty darn close to what I had in my head. And after the gouache, I did a pass with colored pencils. This part was really enjoyable because I got to experiment with trying to get the pencils to blend in with the paint beneath them. I ended up setting the shading colors down first, and then I used a gray pencil that was kind of similar to the main paint color to blend those pencils into the rest of Kate's body. I was really happy with how this worked. I think it blended in nearly seamlessly, at least in my opinion. I'm so relieved that it didn't noticeably stand out in a way that you could tell, oh, this is where this medium begins and the other ends. No, they blended into each other really beautifully, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm finding that the more I worked with traditional media, the more comfortable I am taking risks and experimenting like this. I also pulled out my Posca and Arteza paint markers as well, so dang did I use a lot of stuff for this. I may not have the ease of an undo button, but I'm finding that you can do a lot more than I thought to fix mistakes with traditional media. It's been super fun for me to work with all these different tools and trying to find ways to make them work together in a way that looks good. Every piece I've done traditionally these past few months has been like a little puzzle I'm putting together as I go, and I don't know, it's just been really heckin' fun. So I thought I was done with this piece at this point, but as I was looking at it the next day, I thought I'd try one more thing. I mixed up and watered down some green and white gouache to see if I could attempt to push back Kate's tail and lower body. They were supposed to be farther away, and I felt like it didn't quite look like it. I knew if I desaturated the colors a bit, it would help push back those parts of her body and make them look farther away. I think it did help a little bit, but in the future, I think this is just something I'm going to have to keep in mind as I'm laying down shading to not overwork areas that should be far away like that. Overall though, I love how this piece came out. It was tons of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed joining me for the making of Spooky Miss Hecate here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to comment, hit the like button, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. Thank you all for watching, have a great weekend, and I'll see you all in the next one.